Welcome everybody. This is Dr. Kahn, and I'm here to share a little bit with you about TEP 401, which is the Middle School Methods, Concepts, and Practices course. If you're a secondary education candidate, this is one of your methods courses with field experience attached. If you're an elementary student, you'll still have the field experience attached, but it is not a requirement. You just will not be allowed to teach at the middle level. Well, all that's going to change in 2018 anyway, but I won't get into that story. So today is mainly focusing on introducing you to the subject of middle level education and our textbook, and thus the course itself. As we proceed, I want you always to remember that middle school, and remember that middle school, middle level, young adolescent, the young adolescent child, we were all in this boat together at one time, yes, even me. But it's not just about the school itself, it's also about the child. In fact, fundamentally, it's about how we address the needs of the child in the school. Whether we call the students tweens or young adolescents or adult wannabes, they're all basically going through the same physical and emotional changes of life. They're going through puberty, and for the most part we tend to frame this age group ages 10 to 15. Of course, you know, there's leeway on both sides of that. There are many of you as freshmen and sophomores, even juniors in college, who are still in that adolescent stage in some way, shape, or form. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. I'm still a young adolescent, at least in the way that I think and the way that I act and misbehave sometimes. And I'll always have that part of me, and I think you will too. But middle level education is based on a simple philosophy. It's about how we teach students in the middle, how we address instruction, curriculum, the learning activities, and all of the support that we give the young adolescent. We also know that many people consider this to be our last best chance at these students, to rope them into the love of learning and studying. Oftentimes when students get to high school, it's a lot more difficult to give them the support that they need, but the middle school, with its team practices, as we'll talk about more, has been developed to address those issues. We like to refer to that as being developmentally responsive, and think about that term. We meet the students where they're at. We know this about their developmental issues, and so this is how we devise curriculum and how we organize them and how we organize the school. We tend to do this with all grade levels, and yet the middle level has often been ignored or often thought of as, well, if I don't get my elementary job or my secondary job, I'll settle for the middle school. Well, we want to prepare people who want to be at the middle school and want to accept the challenge, not have it as an alternative choice. We also have to remember that middle level education is different than junior high education. Many of you went to a middle school, but some of you probably went to a junior high or even a K-8 district. The key here, again, is that there are great differences between junior high philosophy and middle level philosophy, as you can see from the chart that we're showing on the screen here. And probably one of the most significant differences is the team arrangement and interdisciplinary instruction, something that was not a part of the departmentalized junior high. As my colleagues used to refer to me from the high school, they would say, "Brian, are you crazy? Why are you working with this age group? You know, I work at the high school, I teach content. You teach children." And my response always was, don't we both teach children? Don't we both teach our clientele? That's how we all become developmentally responsive. I respond to your needs, we respond to the needs of young adolescents. The history of middle school. Well, history is very complex, as we know, but the history of the middle school is relatively short. The junior high came about back in 1909 when educators across the country began to find out that probably the best way to deal with children who had left the elementary grades was to start tracking them into either college-bound students or vocationally technical-bound students, even as early as the 19-teens. Something that is still often done in a number of European countries. Not everyone is prepared to go to college. Many children are prepared to work in the vocations. The junior high represented the high school. It was a little high school, junior high. It was departmentalized. It was based on subject area. You moved from history to English language arts to PE. Now, in a middle school, you'll continue to move often like that, but the emphasis is more on interdisciplinary instruction and being part of a team. By 1945, after the Second World War, educators were noticing that the curriculum at junior highs tended to be too subject-centered. Teachers were not prepared to work with this age group. They didn't understand the needs and the learning issues present, and as well as the issues of physical development and puberty of this age group. They tended to be too teacher-centered. It was about what the teacher knew, not about focusing on the child being the center of the learning, and students were tracked. So we had this continual issue of inequitable educational experiences based on your abilities. And let's remember, this is 40-some years, 35-some years before the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we're not even in 1945 addressing issues of those who have learning issues, students who today we think of as being as having a behavior disorder or being dyslexic. Those things were not on our radar screen even that short time ago. Well, in 1963, William Alexander, an educator who we know as the father of the middle school movement, came out with his first treatise. Actually, the book came out in 1969, and it was called The Emergent Middle School. And this was followed by studies in 1988, 1993, and 2001. These were massive studies across the country to show the value of the educational experiences that should be at the middle level and use the research that was available at the time. The most recent study was conducted in 2009, and at that time they found that there were over 15,000 middle schools across the country that were called middle schools. Most of them were grades 6 through 8, but some were also 5 through 8, some were 6 through 9, and some were 7 through 8. Some were even K through 8. So it's not about the individual characteristics of the district that houses the schools. It's about how the people in that school are prepared to work with that particular age group. Just like we prepare ourselves to work with kindergartners, so we have to prepare ourselves to work with young adolescents. Also remember, it's not about the name on the school. It's about the philosophy that drives the work of the school. It's about what is good for young adolescents. We know that there are many junior highs out there that practice middle school principles. We know that there's middle schools with the name on the school that don't practice middle level principles but have fallen back to the old junior high. So we have to be careful about that. Well, with all these wonderful things to say about middle school, there are critics too. Often the critics decry middle school because it's more expensive. It involves extra planning periods for the team because the team works 1 hour a day with one another, with the colleagues, developing curriculum that is meaningful for that particular age group and individualizing the curriculum for students on their team. Also, there's the notion that middle level tends to be too soft on content, that there's too much touchy-feely information going on, goal setting, how to make friends, how to work together in social groups. These things are very important for this age group, and I would hope that you do not think of them as touchy-feely or fluff. This is as much a part of learning as learning the chemical elements in your chemistry class. This is important. Social skills and social interactions are extremely important for young adolescents, as you remember, and all of you are still engaged in many of those social activities, even with some of the friends that you had that many years ago. Simply put, when middle school is done correctly, it works, and we have the research to back that up. In 1989, the Carnegie Foundation funded a massive study in which they looked at young adolescent development. As you can see on the screen, it was called Preparing American Youth for the 21st Century. And it too echoed many of the same things that we heard back in 1945 about being too subject-centered and too teacher-centered. That was followed up in 2000 by Turning Points 2000. Again on the screen, and this extended the research done in 1989 and had many of the same confirmations that this does work when it's done properly. And finally, in 2012, the last version of This We Believe came out, and This We Believe, which is the position paper of what was formerly NMSA, the National Middle School Association, which rebranded itself in 2012 to become the Association for Middle Level Education. So these three primary documents, Turning Points in '89, Turning Points 2000, and This We Believe in 2010, the last edition, all focus on the issues of adolescent development and how we can best prepare these students based on the literature. And so AMLE, the Association for Middle Level Education, first came about in 1973, and that organization is dedicated to this mission. The website, which you can see on the screen, we'll go into that website in a lot more detail as you'll be doing a scavenger hunt through there. But you'll notice from the images on the screen that this website also includes, and for you, you'll have this available for free when you join as a student, the major publications, which are Middle School Journal and the Middle Level Magazine. Again, based on research and the development of curriculum and instructional and assessment needs for young adolescents. The four attributes of middle level education are expressed in the Middle Level Education Standards, which came about in 2012, and you see on the screen here, being developmentally responsive, being challenging, empowering, and equitable. And also, as you can see from the image, the 16 characteristics which make up each one of those attributes. This is the newest version of the position paper of the Association for Middle Level Education. And the Middle Level Teacher Prep Standards also, which are available on this website, and we'll look at those in much greater detail later. This is what you're expected to know as a teacher in preparation to teach at the middle school. And our new Middle Level Licensure Program, which was adopted in Illinois just last year and will go into place fully in 2018, is now finally, after all of these years, it's finally based on the Middle Level Teacher Prep Standards. So the state ISBE is listening to the experts and the researchers who have been collecting data and information on students and on children, on young adolescents for the last 50 years. And that research continues to grow. Well, this takes us full circle. We're back to the beginning. The image on the screen is the cover of your textbook. You'll be getting letters from me via Blackboard, and also more information from me as Blackboard opens to you next week. In the meantime, please obtain the textbook. take a look at Chapter 1. Everything that I covered today is available in Chapter 1 for you, and there will be a quiz on that material, but we'll talk about that later after class starts. Well, thank you again for your time today. I hope this semester will be a valuable one for you, and I will do my best to meet your needs as one of my students and to be developmentally responsive. This is Dr. Kahn and Middle School by the Numbers. Over and out.